As everybody trickles in, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm Jen, and welcome to today's Twitter Spaces. I have Elena Sinelnikova, CEO and co-founder of Metis, and Mark Richardson, product architect and head of research at Bancor, here with me today. Thank you guys both so much for joining me, and thank you to our listeners as well.
Thank you for having us. Hi, guys.
Nice to see you. Thank you again, Jen, for hosting us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to it. I have a lot of friends here on CT that have been talking about Metis, so I'm interested to hear more about it. Elena, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to start with you. Maybe you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Jen. My name is Elena Sinelnikova. I am co-founder and CEO of Metis, and I am also happen to be a co-founder and CEO of CryptoChicks as well, so which is the women's organization, educational organization in blockchain. That's it. That's all my introduction.
Well, thank you. Mark, if you wouldn't mind also.
Yeah, certainly. I'm Bancor's product architect and head of research. What does that mean? Basically, I am responsible for sort of determining what the features are that the Bancor network has built into it, and how those features should operate. But I wasn't always in the sort of blockchain finance economic space. I actually used to be a physical scientist. I was a research scientist for about 14 years. The job that I had immediately prior to Bancor was at the CSIRO in Australia, which is the Australian Scientific Government Agency. And so it's been a lot of people think that seems like it would be a really awkward transition, but actually it's been pretty natural. I see both of these pursuits as being studies of complex systems, and so it's been it's been fun.
Awesome, thank you. So Elena, you mentioned CryptoChicks, that you're also the co-founder of CryptoChicks. That led to Metis, no? Elena, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, my mic was off. So yes, I am a co-founder of CryptoChicks as well. And CryptoChicks, as I said, is a women organization for the education in the blockchain. We started this project, CryptoChicks, together with my friend Natalia Amelin. That was 2016 that what we started at first. And we started just from the opening a meetup group for women to learn about blockchain and like to learn wallets and exchanges and security. So all that, and this meetup group grew really fast, and we then had a dream of having doing a bigger events, educate more people. We organized the first in the world women hackathon in the blockchain, and it was in 2017. And after that, we actually decided to give the meetup group the name CryptoChicks, this nonprofit organization, and ever since we've been educating women, going to different countries, opening up the programs, the chapters, doing the conferences. So yeah, we did the conferences in Toronto, in New York, in Bahamas, in Australia, in Pakistan, right. During the COVID, we moved everything online, our operations, and so that is mostly our educational online resource, CryptoChicksAcademy.com, and we also have the incubator for women to try on their ideas, and so this is CryptoChicksHatchery.com. We have right now 20 projects in it from all over the world. Just basically helping women to get education and to also to start their own business, to change their career, to find the jobs, and it's been really rewarding work since then.
That's amazing, because I think that like the whole goal of what we're doing also is to really help educate people and make it easier for them to onboard into Web3 and into the space in general. So it was great when I was reading about your background a little bit and I saw what you had done. And that ultimately, was it one of the women that were in Crypto Chicks that you had gotten together with and kind of and founded Metis?
Yes, so Natalia Amelin, yes, she's my longtime friend, so we know each other the whole life. Yes, so she's the person that actually responsible for bringing me into crypto, and that happened like in 2014. So that's when Vitalik started Ethereum, and that's when we tried to install the Ethereum wallet on Windows machine. That's where I basically learned first time about the blockchain and got interested, and that's how it all started.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about Metis specifically now, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh yes, for sure. Yes, so Metis is actually was born from the Crypto Chicks hatchery, which is our incubator. In this incubator again, so every year we open up the application, and we have about 20-30 startups that are joining this program. So Metis was one of the startups, and I knew the founders, the initial founders of Metis before from the Crypto Chicks business, and when they came to Crypto Chicks hatchery with this idea of creating a Web3 decentralized platform for people to start doing business and start easily without, maybe without coding, and to also onboard Web2 companies that would like to extend their business into the Web3. So that was the idea, and it was really close to what we were doing at Crypto Chicks, because the major struggle with our girls starting the business was, of course, the development, which blockchain to choose, and lots of them wanted to choose Ethereum, but Ethereum was not that feasible because of the high gas fees, and also they need to hire developers, and they didn't have money. So making platform like that available for people to start business, maybe to start business in one click without coding, that's something I love this idea. And when they came with a proposal, actually for me to lead this as a CEO, this project, this initiative, I said yes. And that's what we are building all together now. Right now we are 3 co-founders, and also we now have huge team with 49 people. With us, we are all over the world, and we are building a Web3 economy. Our dream, of course, is the decentralization, and that's what we stand by, because I believe this is the ultimate power of the blockchain in it. But with the decentralization, of course, we would like people to have low fees and fast transactions, and also ability to build a business without being a developer. So that's what Metis does. That's what Metis stands for. Of course, this is maybe it's not going to be built over one day. We are in mainnet since November. It's going well, so we are progressing through our roadmap, and building this world that we are imagine.
Thank you. So my next question, I guess, is kind of for both of you. So you're a layer 2 optimistic roll up, right? Maybe for any of the listeners that aren't familiar, like you hear side chains, you hear scaling solutions and layer 2s and roll ups, and you hear that all kind of thrown around a little bit, but maybe you guys could kind of help clarify, like what are the differences really?
Yes, of course. So all this, side chains, scalability solutions, they are and the roll-ups. So they have a goal of solving the problem of transaction being slow and expensive on the layer 1, which is, it could be Ethereum or other layer 1s as well. So what is the difference between, let's say, and again, so everybody's solving this problem differently. So the roll-up is the most decentralized solution. It means that the owners, like those who implement this rollup technology, they don't have ability to kind of compromise the transactions on layer one, because what is happening on the rollups, so it's processing transactions in the batches, like let's say optimistic rollup is batching the transactions that people make and then committing them all at once into layer one, like for example to Ethereum. And when you commit them all at once, you split all this, the gas fee. Let's say that Ethereum gas fee is $100. So this $100 get split into, 100 transactions that are in the batch, so which make a transaction cost only $1. And also at the same time, it's solving the problem of the scalability. It means that on optimistic rollup, the transaction can be committed faster because you don't need to wait until the block is created on Ethereum. So therefore, they're faster and cheaper. And what is happening after is there is this a period of time that you need to wait, and everyone on layer one can post the fraud proofs in this period of time. So this period of time is usually 7 days for optimistic rollup. And so that's where decentralization is getting preserved and security as well, because if there's any transaction that might be, invalid or fraudulent that is committed within this batch, so this transaction can be rolled back within the 7 days if someone, the fraud proofers, so these are the kind of like the validators that validate these transactions, they can post the fraud proof and the transaction is invalidated. So therefore, there's no way for fraudulent transaction to get into a layer one. And that's that's the speed, the cost, and the decentralization is getting is actually in action on the optimistic rollups. So ZK rollups, they are, I cannot say that they are similar, but ZK knowledge is a zero proof knowledge transactions. It means that you don't need to commit the transactions itself. It's just like whatever is in their transactions. This technology of zero knowledge proofs is actually the you don't need to look into transaction in order to get the result of this transaction. So this is the ZK proofs. So there are differences between them. ZK rollups are harder to build. They could be actually faster, and but it's also harder to build on this ZK rollups because their EVM compatibility is not there for the ZK rollup. So this is the difference between ZK and optimistic, and differences between optimistic rollups in a side chain. So side chain is basically your own blockchain that you're creating with your own rules, with your own key holders, with your own consensus. So this is more like a centralized system that you have control over. But this is similar to rollup. It's also transactions get committed in the batches, but there's no fraud proofs or fraud proof windows. So you basically have to trust this side chain that this is good, that there are key holders that are holding, the consensus inside that is good. So it's basically like very, very similar to the layer one. And so this one, because of the centralized nature of it, it can be built really fast, and it also can be really cheap. But at the same time, the decentralization principle and the security could be compromised, right? So basically, all the money that are committed into the side chain are at mercy of just a few people that are key holders to this chain. So that is the difference between side chain and optimistic rollup. But they all solving the same problem of the speed and the cost of the transactions, but of course trying to preserve decentralization, because this is the trilemma that we always have: decentralization versus speed and cost.
That was an amazing explanation. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so I second everything Elena just said, and so I think maybe I'll just be extremely concise here. And that's that I consider layer two to be something that eventually writes its transactions to layer one. And so both the optimistic rollups and zero knowledge rollups, at least in some way, slightly differently to each other, they do depend on the Ethereum blockchain, for example, to exist, right? To process their transactions, right? Or not to process them, but to record their transactions to a blockchain. They don't necessarily have their own blockchain. Whereas something like Polygon, for example, which has been referred to as a layer two, in my mind, is actually more of its own layer one. It's just a competing blockchain, similar to Avalanche or Phantom or Solana or something like that. And so basically, if you're not writing information to some other blockchain, then you are your own blockchain. And if you are writing information to another blockchain, then then you're a layer two. I think that's probably the best way to think about it. But yeah, again, the reason why all of these things exist is to try and address speed, cost efficiency of interacting with the blockchain universe. And so they're all sort of, tending towards the same goal. And, from a project perspective, they're all the same, right? Like the complications of deploying on Arbitrum are the same as deploying on Polygon or Optimism or Solana or Avalanche or Phantom. So from a developer standpoint, it really doesn't matter to me that some of them are layer twos and some of them are layer ones. It's sometimes easier to just think of them as all different blockchains, and in whether or not that's technically true is irrelevant. Their environments are still unique, and they still kind of come with the same development overhead and headache. So yeah, that's probably all I wanted to say about it.
Yeah, that is very good. Yes, I love, Mark, how you explained it as a like side chains as a layer ones as well. Yes, I agree on that. So yes, and we also have this EVM compatibility that Mark probably touched a little bit on. So yes, all the chains, of course, not all the chains, but majority of the chains, they want to make themselves EVM compatible. So if the developers would be easily can be moving from one chain to another, integrating from one chain to another, being EVM compatible or even EVM equivalent. But some of them are not. Like, for example, Solana is not EVM equivalent or compatible, and this is completely different animal. So if you are building on Solana, you cannot basically just transfer your application somewhere on to Ethereum or somewhere else.
So quick question then, when you say building, are you talking about something completely new, or are you talking like Mark, we're looking at deploying Bancor, or Bancor is looking to deploy elsewhere with the launch of B3? Are we saying something like that? Because that was one of my questions, being EVM compatible, how is that, is it make it easier for B3 to launch or deploy somewhere else?
Yeah, certainly EVM compatibility makes it easier. Because the contracts are set up in a way that they kind of have their own knowledge of the Ethereum virtual machine, and so if you go to another environment that uses that where that assumption still holds, then the contracts don't really need to be modified very much. Usually you have to modify them a little bit, but yeah, if something's 100% EVM compatible, in theory you should be able to deploy the exact same code, and it will function in exactly the same way as it is on Ethereum. But while it is more convenient, it's not absolutely necessary. The code that a program is written in is not super important to us. So if we needed to rewrite Bancor version 3 in Rust, for example, then that wouldn't be such a that's not off the table at all. And I just want our community to know that that's not off the table. It just requires a little bit extra effort, and I think because Ethereum has become the default, smart contract language, it's kind of like the new C, right, for programming. It just makes sense for if you are launching a new chain or a new roll-up solution that it should be EVM compatible, because it just means that so many of the developers and projects within the blockchain industry are going to find it so much more like there's gonna be a lot less friction, I think, to interacting with that new chain. So it makes sense from a strategic point of view to make sure that your L2 is EVM compatible.
Thank you. I was kind of curious because Metis is, you say you're a DAO, right? So Bancor and Metis are both DAOs, but I think they're a little bit different with the actual definition of how you define that. So Mark, maybe you can explain Bancor as a DAO, and then Elena, you can explain Metis as a DAO.
Sure. Yeah. So Bancor wasn't always a DAO. The protocol and the project kind of predates the DAO concept, or at least the DAO concept as it exists today. So a DAO is basically a way to distribute the decision power for a project across its users. And this is really useful for a large number of reasons, but it's also very well aligned with the Web3 values. This idea that businesses are essentially going to incorporate their user base, both financially and from a leadership standpoint, and that might be the future of how these types of things are run. And so that's a very Web3 centric value, and it's something that Bancor takes very seriously. And so with the launch of version 2.1, we founded the DAO and introduced the voting token, which is sort of a staking derivative of BNT. And what this means is that every decision that every change in the protocol is essentially put to a vote, and the community of BNT liquidity providers essentially have to make up their minds as to what what gets written into law for Bancor and what doesn't. The major responsibilities that they have right now are which tokens are worthy of being insured, right? Because Bancor is not just a DEX, it's also an insurance provider. And so we need to make decisions about which tokens we want to insure and what type of capital limits that we should put on those insurance policies. And so these are very significant decisions. And if it was made in a very centralized way, that would be both legally and regulatorily problematic. And so having a DAO make these decisions sort of solves a bunch of problems at once. One is the ability to even have this type of service available in a regulatory compliant way. So that's one thing. But more importantly, it means that the people that are actually responsible for managing the risk are the same people that are taking the risk, right? So if there was a big problem and the Bancor protocol was harmed in some way, at the end of the day, it would be the token holders themselves that would probably be that would be suffering. And so it makes sense that they should be the ones making the decision as to how the protocol is run, not just a centralized entity that kind of dictates to them what they should be doing. And so that's kind of the premise behind having a DAO in the first place, and also how Bancor is run. And it's been immensely successful for Bancor. We've gone from not having any kind of decentralized decision making at all to having an on-chain governance system, to then having this kind of snapshot governance system. And over that period, I think we've processed something like 350 proposals now. I think it's the second most active DAO in the space. So we're very proud of it, and we're very proud of our community.
That's great. Thank you. Elena, yours is a little bit different, right, from what I understand?
Yeah, it's very different. So the short answer is Metis is not a DAO. So you can see the Metis DAO in our name, probably in the Twitter and Telegram, as the leftover, and we went from Metis DAO name into Metis just to avoid that confusion. But unfortunately, the Twitter and Telegram, it still says Metis DAO in it. And what was why the DAO was there in the first place, the word DAO? Because when we were thinking about the architecture of that Web3 world that we wanted to build, so we wanted to base it on a DAO infrastructure. And that's what we built into our layer 2, the one that the optimistic roll up. We built in the DAO infrastructure into it. So any company that comes in and would like to start doing a business on the Web3, they automatically can create their own DAO. Uh, and and that's why the DAO was there in the name. But Metis itself, like the team that runs Metis, is not a DAO. But in our decentralized vision, because Metis right now is a decentralized platform, you can come on it, you can build on it, you can use it. So this is completely decentralized. Nobody can, stop you or prohibit you. Like, it's all open for everyone. And in this sense, it decentralized. But Metis team itself, we are not decentralized, so we are a centralized team. But what we have in our vision to offload different aspects of the platform management and governance to different DAOs. So basically, Metis DAO will become Metis DAOs in the future. That is the different organizations that actually created on Metis will be actually running Metis and managing Metis platform itself. So that's the vision, and that's the vision that we are going through our roadmap with this vision. Currently, again, for the DAO infrastructure, and that's what we are building into our layer 2. We use the term actually not the DAO, but DAC is the decentralized autonomous corporation or company. So DAC is the one that think of it as the way more advanced DAO, because in the DAO, as you know it nowadays, it's the entity where you have proposals and the voting, the whole community and the governance and the token. DC can be that, but can be also much more than that. It can be the entity that allows you to manage your business. Doesn't matter if this business centralized or decentralized as a DAO. So that's the infrastructure that we are building underneath. So anyone on Metis platform can come and open their own business. Doesn't matter centralized, decentralized, but run it in a way that no one can stop you or prohibit you or kick you out from the Metis platform. And in this way, you will be decentralized.
I had never heard of that before I really started kind of researching Metis a little bit. Mark, are you familiar with DACs or DACs?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. I think that it's it's more of a. I don't think that these principles necessarily stretch outside of what the definition of a DAO could be. But I think that it makes sense if you're trying to push a certain concept or to help sort of define some specific feature of the way that your setup is different from the rest, rather than call it like a DAO, but better than the ones that you're used to kind of give it its own acronym or something like that. But there's no reason that DAOs can't have that type of setup. But yeah, it's I do see them as synonyms. But yeah, I understand that having your own acronym to delineate it from the DAO culture is important.
Awesome. Elena, I had a question about your launch. So it wasn't too long ago that you guys launched, and you were doing all sorts of incentives, right? Kind of similar like Avalanche Rush, right? You had done some things like that. You launched in November. You said that everything's been going well with that so far. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about it.
Yes. So we actually haven't started running incentives until I think just a few weeks ago. So yes, but we launched back in November, and we reached our 500 million TVL after like just a few weeks, like 8 weeks or something, which was really inspiring for us. So what we have, and this is probably something different. So what Avalanche is doing. So Avalanche they have this, as far as I say, rush incentives, which is incentivizing the users of the platform. So if you, for example, Avi or some other like DeFi protocol, so the incentives are built for the users of Avi that come on Metis, for example. But our incentive program is different. It's called builder money, and that's incentivizing the actual protocols that come into Metis. Because think of Metis as a B2B platform, right? So we are more encouraging the protocols, the projects that come on and build, and with incentive called builder mining. And that incentive is basically returning back all the gas fees that your users pay on Metis, returning it back to the project. And so therefore, more transactions, projects, protocols due on Metis, more revenue they have. So it's not like this program is just, you just put 100 million or something into the budget and you emit into the projects. It's actually ongoing revenue for the projects, and so the one that they can rely on. And more, of course, the better they work, it means that more transactions they do, more incentives and profits they have on Metis. And this is something that we are focusing on with the builder mining, and it's been really successful for us. But our kind of like growth in TVL probably wasn't even because of these incentives. I have hard time kind of like maybe even articulating why it was, other than the work of our team, the way that Metis is built, so it is actually really fast and fast to use, and it's of course much cheaper than Ethereum, for example. And then the whole experience that people have, and also our approach for the projects and people that come onto Metis, we treat them all as our family. So we are putting a lot of effort into actually supporting them, holding them by hand, supporting the projects that come in, treating them as our own businesses, each of the projects that come in onto Metis. And that's probably why our TVL grew so much and so fast, and not because of the just monetary incentives. But our incentives are great, and then they're working right now. We are helping lots of projects, and they are drawing the builder mining from every transaction. So now, tens of the projects that doing right now, and we're onboarding more and more, and that will do that.
That was actually one of my questions, because I had read something about the applications getting the transaction fees back. So that's an incentive that you're running for in a limited period of time to incentivize.
Well, it's not. I cannot say that this is a limited period of time. So what is happening, because we continue to build, and our gas fees are going to change because of the new technology that we're building right now is connected to the decentralized storage. Our fees will dramatically go down. So the gas fees will go down, and therefore the program that we right now running with the builder mining, and right now it's they getting like the project getting like a little bit over than 30% from the gas fees back. So once our transaction fees are like 25 cents instead of a couple of dollars that we have right now, it is not going to be enough. So this program is going to change, and so that is why probably you think it's temporarily. But yes, so once we have the lower gas fees, so we have to figure out the builder mining program is going to change as well to incentivize the projects more, and not just with the gas fees.
That's nice to hear that when you have more transactions and more users, the gas fees go down, because it's kind of the opposite on Ethereum right now. You know, the more congested it is, the higher the gas fee, and you could always tell how congested it is when you go to process a transaction.
Well, that's the kind of flavor of the optimistic roll up. More transactions you have in the batch, cheaper they are. Yes, there are more transactions, cheaper they are.
What's the state of DeFi over on Metis right now? I mean, you're kind of new. Have you seen a lot of DeFi protocols kind of pop up over there?
So yes, of course, we have DeFi, but maybe I'm not the right person to talk about it. So maybe our business development guys would be kind of the best to talk about it. So because what I is responsible in my team, of course, to oversee the overall the architecture, the team health, and everything. But yes, I know that, and we have actually meeting right after this one. We going to overview all the DeFi protocols that we have on and see which ones and who is doing what and what are the best ones probably. So this is something that we are still kind of researching on our own platform, because we are decentralized. So sometimes we don't even know this protocol exists on Metis, and we find out about it. Oh yes, so these guys deployed on Metis, and so what are they doing? So this is the whole part of the decentralization for us, is not probably knowing what is and not controlling. That's probably the most exciting part, because we cannot control DeFi protocols that are running on Metis. We support the ones that are that we have this partnership with and relationship with, and we help them with the marketing. But I don't want to put any protocol over the other right now and say, oh, this one is the best or this one is the best. So you guys probably can see in our Twitter and the Telegram our different partners announcements, and decide for yourself which protocol is the best for you.
That makes sense. You want to support everybody equally, kind of give them a fair chance to prove themselves.
That's correct. But at the same time, I know that Bancor that come in into our platform is bringing this one thing that probably I even haven't heard other protocols have it, but I might be mistaken again. So this is 100% impermanent loss protection. This is something that I talked to Jen before this AMA, and I told her, you know what, I haven't heard about that, and that this is something remarkable that Bancor has. So maybe Mark going to tell about that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, in contrast to the status quo, there are a couple of things that Bancor does differently. The major concepts that are introduced with version 2.1 is single-sided staking, true single-sided staking. So I had I had to respond to some comments recently on Twitter that there are these, other single-sided staking AMMs, but they're actually not. They're just pretending to be single-sided. And so there's a protocol called Zappa, for example, which has made this kind of apparent or quasi single-sided liquidity provision easier, where it will swap some of your tokens for the other side of the pool in such a ratio that they can then be contributed directly in the correct proportion to the pool that you're contributing liquidity to. So, for example, if you're providing Link via one of these services, and I know Kyber, for example, has an integration with Zappa to allow for this. But if you're providing Link tokens, immediately half of them are sold for the whatever pool that you're providing Link to. So there is no actual single-sided liquidity provision in those situations, because it's just that you have to translate some of the value of what you're providing into the other side. Whereas on Bancor, it's true single-sided liquidity provision. If someone's providing Link on Bancor, every single one of those Link tokens is provided as liquidity. It's not ever swapped for the other side of the pool for the purpose of liquidity provision. So it's I'd say a subtle difference, but an important one. The other thing that we have is impermanent loss insurance. So I think the whole industry should be gravitating towards divergence loss instead of impermanent loss now. So I'm going to start referring to it that way. But yeah, divergence loss is what happens when there's a change in the price of the two assets that are bonded together inside the pool. And this has sort of a square root profile, but it can hurt a lot. A lot of the people that are liquidity providers on Bancor have had their hearts broken using other AMMs, especially some of the more seasoned yield farmers that were trying to use those liquidity incentives during sort of DeFi summer period. Especially the launch of Sushi Swap, which had some very attractive, yield farming APYs. But yeah, because it's kind of obscured from view, you really have to, it's really only when you withdraw your liquidity and try and work out how much money you would have had you not provided liquidity in the first place that you can start to realize just how bad that was. Bancor recently sponsored and collaborated with a project to launch a website called il.wtf. And if anyone's interested, you can actually go to this site, put in your Ethereum address, and the site will measure how much divergence loss you've accumulated across all of the different AMMs on Ethereum. So if you've wondered how bad it could be, I think that's a really interesting site to use. It's a really useful tool. We've recently had an AMA with 0xB1, who is the founder of Fodal. And his impermanent loss, for example, he's one of the earliest and most prolific yield farmers. His impermanent loss costs were $260 million. So it's a very significant number, and you'll see other people in DeFi start to report some of their numbers as well. But it's not unusual to have IL in the millions or tens of millions, even for people that consider themselves small fish. So yeah, it's a big problem, and one that I think is extremely important for the retail facing side of things. And if we want on-chain liquidity to be here forever, which I think we should, then it's important that someone comes up with a long-term solution that protects users against those kinds of devastating losses. And so Bancor's impermanent loss protection mechanism is designed specifically for that. Now, in version 2.1, the impermanent loss protection is vested. It takes 100 days for it to scale up to full effect. But on version 3, that's going to be instantaneous. So you no longer have to wait 100 days vesting for that. The caveat to that last claim is that there's going to be a 7-day cooldown period, but I still think 7 days compared to 100 days is nothing at all. So it's a dramatic improvement. Yeah, I think I'll leave the spookering there for now. But yeah, essentially, just what Elena said about the impermanent loss insurance, we are, I think, the only protocol that offers it, and I do think it's extremely important.
Yeah, I don't feel bad right now that I haven't heard about this before. And thank you, Mark, for explaining that. And this is truly, I think, remarkable feature. That's you can have all the benefits with no impermanent loss.
Thank you, Elena. And thank you, Mark, for explaining that. It kind of cleared it up a whole bunch now, Elena, from what we were talking about earlier.
Yes, definitely.
If anybody has any questions from the audience, otherwise, if Mark or Elena, if you guys have any final thoughts for us.
Oh, I have a question for Elena, actually. And it just, you said that you took the DAO out of the name for Metis, and that was to reflect kind of the centralization of the team structure. I was wondering if that's true as well from like the network security standpoint. Like, how many effective miners do you have on your optimistic rollup?
Since that, yeah, again, maybe you put me on the spot. I cannot answer you the exact number. Yes, so we have
Oh, that's okay.
the people that are like, yes, so we have this running, people that are running the nodes, right? So these are decentralized, of course. So anyone can become one, and we right now doing that. So yes, so Metis vision is completely to be decentralized, and Metis platform right now is decentralized in the way that anyone can use it, anyone can build on it, no one can be kicked out of it. And yes, our nodes are run in a decentralized way by the people, by the community. So that is so basically that is the reality right now of Metis. And as we build further, so we always put decentralization first. So whatever we do, we put decentralization first and evaluate every feature, every new thing that we put into Metis from this decentralization perspective, because that's why we started this project, and that's why we are building the Web3 world, so to be decentralized. Otherwise, we would do it on a SQL server and be done with it.
Got it.
That would be cheaper. Yes.
Yeah, of course. So when you said Metis is not a DAO and that it is centralized, you meant just with regards to decision making and not necessarily the status of the network.
Yes, exactly. Decision making is all belongs to the team right now, even though we are consult with our community a lot. So we have the whole Metis community, and we basically the decision that are made on Metis right now is actually coming from the community, but not formally is. But this is something that formal we're going to be doing, and that's what we're doing as we're building our DAC infrastructure, decentralized autonomous companies. We are offloading this decision-making responsibility into different communities, actually. So it will not be only one community that runs Metis platform and that do the decision-making, but it's going to be multiple of them responsible for different areas of them, of Metis.
That was a great question, Mark. Thank you for clarifying that. Thanks, Elena.
No problem.
Mark, do you have any other questions? Or Elena, do you have any questions for Mark?
Yeah, I just would like to, probably it's not a question, just like to welcome Mark and Bancor into our Metis family.
Yeah, so it's non-committal right now. So I jump on a lot of these AMAs with different chains all the time, and this is to serve many purposes simultaneously. One is that I do just enjoy speaking to developers and founders of other chains and learning about their ecosystem and their ambitions and things. But one is also to sort of give visibility to our community, right? Because the Bancor DAO at the end of the day is the supreme authority and decision maker for the project. And so very, very soon, we've kind of just politely asked them to give us some space while we get the Bancor version 3 proposals and documents and things ready and finish the audits and things like that. But I know that they're extremely keen to put Bancor on other chains. And so, there is no limitations to which chains that the Bancor DAO can choose to launch on. And so, this call is really to sort of introduce them to you, and to the Metis community. And so if they decide that Metis is where we want to launch next, then we will launch there. But this is all going to happen via a governance process. And so I just don't want to be I don't want to give the wrong impression that this is something that's already decided or already locked in stone or something like that. But if that's what the community decides, then that's what we will do.
Yeah, no, not at all. So it's great that we have this opportunity with the Bancor, and so that it would be awesome to have your community joined with ours, and of course we'll treat you as a family, as I told you already.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. And thank you to all of our listeners. And Elena, if anybody has any questions directly for you, what would be the best way? Well, I mean, for you or for Metis, would it be Twitter or Telegram or?
I think Twitter is the best. Yes, I respond to my Twitter personal messages. So yeah, please guys, feel free to message me on Twitter.
And Mark, any questions for Bancor? Best to direct them to our Telegram.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the Telegram groups, and there's a couple of them. Jen can add them probably as into the replies underneath the announcement for this Twitter Spaces. But yeah, I'd say Telegram is probably the best place to reach other members of the community and also the developers. But then, you know, you can also feel free to DM me directly over Twitter. I respond to that pretty regularly as well. Ironically, the worst way to reach me right now is my email, which is just a sign of the times, I think. But yeah, Telegram or Twitter is preferred, but you know, you can find my email by Googling my name, and you can reach me there as well.
Great. I'll go ahead and add that. Thank you guys again for joining me, and thank you again to all of the listeners. We have another AMA coming up on Thursday, so hopefully you'll join us then also.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Elena. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. You guys have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.